I'm very excited about today's episode as I get to share with you an amazing conversation I had with the actor, writer, director, Chon. We're going to be talking about his film, Blue Bayou, which comes out this week. And I'm very excited for you all to see it so we can talk about it. So please see it. Let me know. Let's discuss. Blue Bayou was an official selection of the 2021 Cannes Film Festival. It's a moving and timely story of a uniquely American family fighting for their future. Antonio LeBlanc, played by Chon, is a Korean adoptee raised in a small town in the Louisiana Bayou. He's married to the love of his life, Kathy, who's played by Alicia Vikander, and is the stepdad to their beloved daughter, Jessie. Struggling to make a better life for his family, he must confront the ghosts of his past when he discovers that he could be deported from the only country he has ever called home. I had a chance to see Blue Bayou, and it's absolutely 100% one of the most incredible films I've ever seen. It's astonishing. It's mind-boggling to me and incredibly frustrating at the same time that Chon is so damn talented. I find it personally offensive and slightly unfair. After seeing the film, I sat in silence for over an hour just thinking about the story, the world, the characters that Chon had so thoughtfully created. The cast, those exceptional performances. But I kept coming back to Chon and how he did this. How did he do this? I was very grateful that I was going to be able to have a conversation with him so I could learn a little bit about how he was able to pull this off. But what happened for the following days, in a couple weeks, leading into 3 weeks, is that I sat with this film and I kept thinking about it. Whether I was in the car, I was at home, where I was working, I kept coming back to this film because there's so many different elements of this movie that I'm blown away by. He wrote an incredible script. Then he directed a beautiful film that has a clear point of view. Then, as an actor, he gave us an absolutely sensational performance. And when it was all said and done, surprise, with this meticulous approach and thoughtfulness, he created an absolute masterpiece. So let's talk to him about it. So I watched this movie on Wednesday. I texted one of the publicists after watching this movie and I said, I've never had a reaction like I did to any movie like I did watching this movie. Ever. I honestly spent the next 24 hours really just thinking about life. I think about my circumstances. And then I spent the next few days damn, how did this guy do this? We've got 30 minutes to just dive right on into it. So where did this idea, how did the story come to you?
I started writing this 5 years ago and I started hearing through the adoption community that there was this issue of adoptees being deported, these of, loopholes in paperwork. And then I read a string of news articles and watched some videos about it. And I found out that nobody really was talking about this or knew about this. And it was really kind of being glanced over in the whole immigration policy of it all. And it was shocking. I just couldn't believe that a child or a baby can be brought from a different country by Americans, and then the U.S. government allows that, and then 30 years later decides that they're not American citizens because their parents didn't file the proper paperwork. When you're a child, how could you have possibly known that this is an issue? You don't know to look for this, and then it's the adults' responsibilities that this stuff gets taken care of. You can't put that on the adult. It's just, I don't know, being born in the US, I don't know what kind of paperwork happened when I was born, or birth certificates, and and I've lost my birth certificate a few times. It's just, ludicrous to me that this was happening. So I, realizing that no one was even knew that this was happening, I felt like this deep need to share this issue on film. That's where it came from, and it was just a long process of finding a way to tell the story in an effective manner, but not making it feel like propaganda, and telling, just bringing empathy to somebody that was actually going through an experience like this. That was my main goal.
Well, You did it. I mean, I honestly, like, I've every single conversation I've had in the last 5 days has been around just so many things around you. From like, if I could sit here and have a conversation with you for 30 minutes about acting in this movie, I could have a conversation with you directing this movie, I could have a conversation writing this movie. And so like, I just don't know how you accomplished it. So you come up, you find this story, you find something that it really resonates with you, and you're like, I want to try to put a light on this. And to your point, that's not propaganda. I want to tell through the human elements of it. Why Louisiana? Why, like, there's so many elements. What made you pick the Bayou? Was it, there was an idea that you already had that you're kind of marrying, or was it all kind of coming together?
Yeah. I think, the big thing for me was we've seen the Asian American story from New York and Los Angeles and the coasts. What I haven't seen is representation for my community in other places, whether it be Louisiana, or I have family friends from South Dakota, and someone like Stephen Eunice from Michigan. Like, we're all over, and for me, another thing was specifically Asian American stories are very limited to one ethnicity. So like, one film can only handle one ethnicity. So it has to be like a Chinese story or a Korean story, and rarely do I see just like two ethnicities in one film and how they relate and are similar and are different. So, New Orleans, specifically, there's a huge Vietnamese community there. They came there. A lot of them were relocated there as refugees after the Vietnam War. I dated somebody from New Orleans. So I had an intimate understanding of Louisiana. And I always was like, the film needs to be filmed here about Asian Americans. And then as an adoptee, not me, but like is the adoptee experience, there's a whole encompassing, thing of like, what's it like to be placed somewhere where there's not a lot of people that look like you, and what must that be like? And that is the experience for some adoptees. And rather than, being adoptee in LA or New York, I think it's a little different. So the representation of that, I think, is quite interesting. Seeing an Asian American with a Louisianan accent can be off-putting at first. And then, I put it right in your face, the first scene. And then by 10 minutes in, you forget about it. That's how I think things become normalized, is you just have to expose it and then make it make a huge deal about it. And people just accept it, and I think that was a big goal of mine. And then, New Orleans as a whole is such a resilient place, like they just dealt with a hurricane, and yet they carry on. And that's how I felt Antonio was, he's a survivor, and New Orleans is also very, very diverse, but very diverse in a different way that Los Angeles is. Those are all factors in placing it in the South, and specifically in New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, you said that you talked about representation and how when you put these things on screen, they normalize those experiences to the audience. But the key is when they're done correctly, and you layered in so many elements just so seamlessly. And Louisiana was such a beautiful backdrop for the creative tone that you had, like the textures, the colors, the tone of the film visually. Like, I want to watch I almost want to go back and watch it without any sound, because it was also, there was the pacing of the camera, the film, like it was along with the performances that you and everybody had, came together perfectly. And then it felt normal. Yeah. I'm just, this movie gives me goosebumps. And whenever I think about it. How long did you write the first draft? Like, when you finally felt like you wanted to take it out and share it with somebody in a real business manner, how long did it take for you to get there?
Me personally, I'm not scared to just put it out there and get feedback right away. And I'm the type that, every script is different, but this particular one, the first draft doesn't resemble this film whatsoever. I just had to get something out that was just whatever my subconscious did. And the ideas and sort of my subconscious elements are in this film. But in terms of like the structure or the character, like, a lot of it you wouldn't even recognize it. I just had to get something out and just be like, okay, this is what's in my heart. And these are the things that turn me on right now. then it was about like, okay, what are actually the elements that are important in this film? And how do I, like with the things you're talking about, like the layering of it all and getting all these like a myriad of themes and characters. How do I make this all coalesce into something that's cohesive and feels like a film and not just things that excite me, and that's, through the rewrites. But, first and foremost, it was about this experience of an adoptee and what is that like, and so like this, to your point about it being in the South and the colors and, there's something that I have felt that's melancholic when I've kind of spent time alone in the South, being Asian American, that really resonated with me. And just the Bayou being up next to some, these really peaceful, beautiful places that I feel like, speaking to a lot of adoptees, there's a sense of like, who does understand you, who does, shares the same experience you, and that melancholy and loneliness that I found the South has at times. It was just about finding those sort of things and then just finding the spine of, okay, this is about bringing empathy and the process of what would it be like to find out you aren't American, like the government doesn't recognize you as American, and dealing with that. That's the spine, and then layering everything else on to help you deal with that internally, I think was how I kind of, layered everything.
And did that getting that into an outline and into a first draft, did you feel it, was that like 6 months to a year, or was that like pretty quick to your point that you're not afraid to share stuff quickly? Was it like 3 months? How long did it take to get you there?
Yeah. I think, 3 months is right around where I started really sharing it, but I got opinions early on just to get certain, but I did work with a few adoptees very hand in hand, and I was sharing stuff with them very early on. Like, just, is this authentic? Does this ring true to you? What was your experience like? And making sure, because that authenticity was very important to me because this is their story. And I'm just like the conduit and making sure that I can service them. I spoke with, Macro, the production company, about this early on. I said, I don't want to do a treatment or an outline for this. I will do as many drafts as you want. I'll do 20 drafts if that's what it takes for you guys to be satisfied, but don't make me do this two-step, like these step processes, because it's gonna stifle my creativity of what this could be and kind of the free sort of association and flow of what, the way I work. If you make me sort of categorize this and vet this for you in that way, I think it's going to limit sort of what I can make this from just an emotional standpoint. Because then you're making me think about it very logically, and one thing leads to another, and this is breaking to act 2. And can you just let me explore and find this in an untraditional way? And thankfully, they were open to that and let me do it, which is why I think this film is what it is, and it's kind of the way I have to approach each film. Each script it can't be this sort of process of like, okay, usually last time I did it like this, so this time it must work for this. It's like, okay, I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know how this is going to end up. And that fear of it being shitty, I think is a really great motivator for me to think deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, I love that. I love your approach, because if you go through that step process and you start with a treatment and an outline, it starts feeling very formulaic. And then it starts getting in your own head where you're like, oh, I need to figure out what I'm going to do the second character before the second. You're finding it in the story and letting the story, dictate it. And if you're down to do a bunch of drafts, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think like you get into the mode of professional writer mode. Hey, I'm going to give you a draft, then I'll give you a rewrite, and like that's like the Hollywood way, But I'm not doing it for that reason. I'm doing it to shine a light on this issue. So I'm not concerned with doing 20 drafts, because I want it to be good. And why wouldn't I do that? I'm not doing this as a job. So I think it shows in the film that I'm doing to do whatever. At some point it needs to resemble a film though. So like, you have, some sort of form of a script at some point, and you're like, okay, I need to make this into a film, and it does need to have structure, and these characters do need to serve their purposes. But that I don't want to start doing that till I'm like, like you're saying, the story kind of starts to lead and tell me what it needs to be in order to, do that spine of bringing empathy.
Did you continue to tweak the script while you're in production, or was it locked for more or less when you started filming?
Yeah, I mean, for all my films, I do. I will make changes but for this film, not so much. I mean, there's things I cut out for sure. There's scenes that it was so painful to cut out. There's a particular scene, two particular scenes that I wish I could have kept. One was Parker. You're seeing kind of maybe behind the curtain of how she's dealing with her demise, her death. And she goes over on this bridge or this freeway overpass, and she sits on the edge of this overpass. She's inconsolable. She's crying really, like crazy. And she's, you can tell she's thinking about, maybe I should just end it now. And there was a serendipitous thing where all of a sudden fireworks started going off in real life. And I didn't plan that. And it was just like, I just looked at the AD. I was like, is this for real? Is this really happening? And it was so bright, and she was bawling her eyes out, and these fireworks were going off, and she's and I was just like, this is a gift from God. And I just had to cut it. But it was just not, it just detracted from the main, it just, as emotional as it was, just didn't serve that sequence, and it felt like tangential, and there was another scene like that towards the end with Ace and Kathy that was beautifully acted between Alicia Vikander and Mark O'Brien, and it was like just an Oscar level scene in terms of the acting. But it's just like, the pacing of the film, and so those scenes were written and I had to cut, and just painful. But in terms of the structure and what's on the screen, I'd say is relatively what's written.
Wow. That's incredible. Well, I look forward to the director's cut so I can see those scenes. I can't imagine how hard it is to cut all that out. That, especially on the bridge, that sounds like a beautiful moment. And well, the pace, I think one of the things I kept going back to was the pacing of this film. And I think that, again, your ability to be the writer, director, and the actor in it really just pulled you through this story where I couldn't tell if this movie was 15 minutes long or 40 minutes long or 2 hours long, because I was so enthralled with every little detail, and it just kept me engaged, and the pacing of it was so perfect. It never felt fast. It never felt slow. It was just, really well done, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. How do you approach, being in it? Because I think that just your acting performance alone, is one of the most incredible things I've seen in the last few years. And how did you approach the day? You'd wake up in the morning and you're the director taking care of business decisions and creative decisions. How did you find the time to get into these incredibly powerful roles, when you're having to answer questions and take care of business?
Specifically for that, I'm trying to take care of everything that's within my power beforehand. Anything that I could possibly address before the day, I'm doing it, so like planning and preparation is super important to me if I'm going to act in the thing. I did a lot of rehearsal with my daughter in the film and with the other, characters, Alicia, we talked in depth about, about everything and discussed everything we could beforehand, so that when we were on the day, we weren't debating or trying to figure things out. It's like, let's go, let's do this, and so that helps a lot. And then, I did all the preparation for the acting part. I did all the emotional preparation beforehand and the accent work, so that I wasn't thinking about that. And when you're right, acting and directing in something, you kind of as a performer come last. So because of all that preparation, when I come to set, I'm in service to everybody else. I am not thinking about what I'm doing as a performer. I'm like, I need for the actors to feel taken care of and confident in my vision, and also like what I need from them. So that comes first. And then I step in, and then because of the preparation, I just engage and I know where I am in the script, and then I'm present, So, like, for example, that scene, the sort of the one with Alicia, where we had that big fight in the kitchen. My biggest thing I told myself for that scene is, okay, I've done the work. Let's block this scene out. Let's see where we need to move the camera and what's going to make sense logistically. And then it was like, okay, I know the DPs are going to have my back in terms of making sure the composition and all that's going to be good. And then I was like, okay, I'm here to be present and be completely available to Alicia. And let's see where this takes us. So I was completely open to whatever would happen or whatever mistakes. The one thing, the rule was don't break. Like we have to, no matter what happens, we have to keep going. So what you're seeing in the film, I think, is like the third take, so that was but I think the actors really appreciated that because I'm there, I'm in it with them. So if I'm asking them to stand under freezing rain, I'm doing it with them. So there was this sort of trust and camaraderie where I'm not asking them to do anything that I wouldn't do. And I think that in itself like creates this sort of like collective energy that maybe you wouldn't have if you weren't also acting and directing,
With your trust with your DP, like when you said that you would roll these takes, was the idea that you would do a scene and then just run it right back and just go back to your first mark and do it again?
I just go again. I never watch playback.
Wow.
I never watch playback, especially if I'm in it, because if there's any doubt, let's just do it again. Let's not waste the time, because watching a take is the same amount of time that it takes to do a take, and let's just go again. And the other thing is any adjustments we need to make, like we make the adjustments right away, go, hey, maybe you came a little too far here. How did that look? Like, was the framing, could you get both of us in the frame? Well, then maybe I should just move a little bit forward, in this moment. And then we go again. We're just like, okay, let's keep this momentum going. I'm a big advocate of momentum while shooting. It's like, I don't want things to get stale. I don't want it to feel overplayed. You gotta, I call it riding the lightning. And you gotta stay in the moment and because I also feel like, Alicia really feels that that actors are like thoroughbreds. You have a window, especially for these emotional scenes. You can, but like, it's probably not the best thing to do is run these emotional scenes, for hours. It's like, okay, you have like the sweet spot. So you're trying to ride that sort of wave. So like the momentum is important. So I'm not trying to over intellectualize things. I'm trying to, really feel it out. And then we just go, because there are other times, when you're watching dailies with your DP or you're kind of, I do rolling edits where I'm editing as I'm directing. Those are times where you can reflect, but like, if you've done your preparation and you have common understanding with everybody that's making the film with you, let's just go. Like, let's trust that we've done the work and trust ourselves.
You have a very confident point of view that it is the right point of view. Have you always had that confidence with these decisions, or did that take time for you to craft?
Oh, absolutely. It took time to craft. And it's just like, ultimately comes down to what matters to me in storytelling. So I'll always take performance over, technical or composition. And that drives my DP fucking crazy because I'll just be like, let's go. And then he knows that if a performance is really great in a certain take, I'm going to use it, even if it's part of it soft or, and that drives him absolutely nuts, which makes him sometimes feel like not let me roll if it's, so like, but then ultimately, like, what are we like, what's the purpose of the thing? Is it, what are we watching? Of course, like all that stuff is important. And I am also like, get completely fixated on certain things, but I think like it comes down to what matters to me, which is like, generally does the movie feel like it has direction and is intentional and has a color palette and is directed and not an accident and are we delivering on what the script promised and all that stuff, and then at the same time, like, is it effective? If it's just like technically sound, no one will care.
When you look back at this experience, especially on set, what was the hardest day? Was it from the actor point of view, or is it from a directing point of view?
I'd say every day of this production was pretty hard, but there was, we lost a day because of weather. Like there was like this rain and it blocked the water levels rose that we couldn't get to the bayou that we were shooting at. So we lost a day. So, you have to truncate stuff. So we were under some time pressure, and there was this, there's a scene where, we're trying to get all this stuff and I'm on a motorcycle and I'm trying to, and it's raining on me, and the water that we were, a reservoir that we were using was from the actual and it was absolutely freezing. So basically the water was so cold that I was getting brain freeze. But we didn't have time to try to warm it up or you just had to go. So I can't feel my hands, and I'm trying to rev this motorcycle. It's quite dangerous. And I'm trying to have control of this motorcycle. And then we have a stunt guy who's also having trouble. That day was quite difficult, and it was nighttime, and there's visibility issues and, the lighting, to adjust it. It's a condor, so it takes time to move. And all those factors were quite difficult in that moment. And the whole limit of time was challenging. The amount of stuff that we had to get at that bayou was really hard in terms of how limited we were, the error of margin was so small already as it was, because it's not like this big budget film. So that I think though that particular day was probably one of the most challenging. Oh, and then in the party, the Vietnamese party, by the end of it, I was just, moving stuff myself and cheating stuff, moving people around, because we just ran out of time. We only had that house for really a day, so wow. I was trying to get a day and a half. I don't know what it was, I forget, but by the end of it, I was hauling ass, and we also had to get Alicia singing and want to get that right. It was,
on some movies that you just get to sing, the party would be 3 nights, and you'd film the singing one night, and you'd film the first half of the party one day. And that was all in a day.
Yeah. And you're right. Like I said, you're right in the lightning, and I want to get this at the outdoor of the party and golden hour. And, you have a window there, and you're trying to time all of that. I think,
there's a lot of times where I'm watching the natural light and I'm like, they nailed that. How did they get that?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So without getting any spoilers, I'm not going to talk, I don't want to share the end of it, but was that a day? Was that final scene? Was that one day?
That's one day.
Unbelievable, man. I don't understand. Okay, we're just going to need 2 more hours to discuss this, and we don't have it. So I can't believe that. So I can't wait for the listeners to see this movie and imagine that last scene one day. So what do you want people to feel when they leave the theater and they see this movie? What is the thing you want them to feel when they walk away?
Yeah. And it's just like you're saying in the beginning, it does all these things. And I think the reason why it's so emotional is because there is, we were at Cannes, and you get the reviews, and some people feel, it can be dramatic at times. Well, that's intentional, because the whole purpose of this is I want people to feel something, and I want people to just align themselves with somebody who's actually going through something like this. So it's intentional that they're supposed to feel, it's not supposed to be just slice of life, and I want people to walk away. I don't want to let people off the hook, and I want people to walk away from this film and think twice. They could be laying in bed and think twice about these characters. What happened to Antonio? What happened to Kathy? How did they end up? Did they end up, what happened with them? And I want there to be questions and to think twice, because then I think you think twice about this issue, which is this is happening to real people, and it doesn't let them off the hook. I think if the ending is tied up into a neat bow, it lets people kind of forget about it, and they can go about their lives and just kind of oh, that was cute, or, but that's not real life. And I think that, talking to real adoptees that have been deported that I've screened this film for, they're very appreciative of that aspect of the ending of this film, because they feel it represents what it really feels like for their experiences. And that's the most important thing for me, because I made this film for them.
I love it. I have one last question for you. What's your comfort food when you're having a bad day and you're just thinking about I can't wait to get home and make this? What is your comfort food?
Pasta with a stick of butter. I just melt a stick of butter. Basically I'll boil the pasta, I'll melt a stick of butter in a pan, and then I'll take all the pasta and just throw it in the pan of butter. And then I'll make the sauce on the side, and I'll just use a shitload of chili flakes. and just like destroy my stomach.
Justin, I wish you the best of luck. This has been such an amazing conversation. I still have so many more questions, but I will listen to every interview you do to uncover all the answers. So I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy dude.
Thank you so much. Truly appreciate your time.
Thank you, man. Bye. I'll include a link to the trailer in the show notes, as well as a link to the official Blue Bayou website. You can follow Justin Chon on Instagram at Justin Chon, Chon. And you can find us on Instagram as well at The Smith Society Pod. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. You're awesome.